What is exactly the national security strategy and why it matters for the countries like India? That is the first important aspect that we have to discuss. US is still one of the dominant power and still is shaping a large aspects of the international or the geopolitical aspects. That's why from the perspective of United States of America, it is very important to understand this particular doctrine. To ensuring and consolidating its home position, so in that case, it is important to understand that to some extent, America is now talking about the self-centric policies. Talking about the core pillars, apart from economic nationalism, all the things that are being highlighted is regarding the self-centric aspects. Infrastructural competition they want to put for China, the critical mineral partnership where they have clearly stated about the role of India in order to ensure the alternative to the Chinese policies. Hello everyone, I am Vishal Sir and today we are going to discuss a very important topic from the perspective of the geopolitics, which is the recent release of the United States of America's national security strategy. Now see, when we are talking about the national security strategy, this is the political direction to the upcoming policies from that particular regime. So why we have to only discuss specifically from the perspective of the United States of America that how it is seeing the world, how it is seeing its participation at different stages of the world, which are going to be the very important areas as far as the US foreign policy is concerned. So it's not a military doctrine, but yes, it is the political stand that that particular regime is going to adopt from the upcoming time onwards and to shape the country's narrative as far as its participation at the different events is concerned. So since US is still one of the dominant power and still is shaping a large aspects of the international or the geopolitical aspects, that's why from the perspective of United States of America, it is very important to understand this particular doctrine. Now, when this doctrine is being laid out, obviously there are different countries who are going to have issues, or maybe certain countries might be prioritized. So from the perspective of India, how it is going to impact the United States relation with India and how it is providing the maneuvering space for India, that is also very important to be discussed, and that's what is the need for today's discussion. So whether you are appearing for the prelims or writing the answers regarding the mains, or you are an aspirant who are appearing for the personality test, there are very high chances that if you have opted for the foreign services as one of the prioritized option, or maybe you might be having the political science and the international relations or anything related to the foreign policy that is part of your DEF, this is going to be a question that is having very high probability because it is giving an idea regarding the entire worldview. So let's start the discussion of this particular topic. Now, what is exactly the national security strategy and why it matters for the countries like India? That is the first important aspect that we have to discuss. So as I have already talked about, that it is not a military strategy. It is not saying that this is our enemy, this is our friend, or it is not going to change the military posture. But yes, it is the political commitment that in the further years, in the subsequent years, how the United States is going to look towards different partners with whom they are going to accelerate their relations, with whom they are going to create further bonhomie, which is the region of their concerns. That all things are being highlighted as a part of the national security strategy, and that's why it is the strategic worldview statement. Now, every regime generally comes up with their own national security strategy that talks about its prioritization. Certain regimes talks about, let's say, the rebalancing. Certain regime talks about the balance of power. Certain regime talks about the global cooperation. Certain regime talks about the global retreat. So it is their worldview, their view of the entire geopolitical scenario that is making them distinct from the previous regimes in the United States. Now, talking about what are the specific things that are being mentioned or the core ideas that you can get from the national security strategy, it is the narrower ideological and the make America great again centric. So how it is narrower? Because it is talking about the America first policy, it is talking about the American interest first, and all the other things are going to come later. So it is self-centric policy. It is unlike the previous policies of the United States after 1823, because 1823 के बाद to some extent they have adopted the policy of Monroe Doctrine, jahan par they had rested the participation in different parts of the world जहां पे conflict चल रहे हैं, and only after the world wars they have started doing the active participation again in that. So it is a complete change of the stand now again from the perspective of the United States again. That's why sometimes you are able to see that this particular policy is also referred as the Monroe Doctrine 2.0. Now, talking about the selective American engagement means they are identifying the theaters that yes, this theater is going to give me comparatively more advantage. This is for my benefit. This is the transactional partnership. So wherever America is going to get benefit, these are the regions that are being prioritized by America as far as its national security strategy is concerned. Apart from that, the transactional partnership, for example, the tariff barrier, the trade related issues, the selective engagement, the technology related partnership, all these things are being prioritized, but selectively in order to ensure that America is going to get benefit of that, not the other countries which America thinks are getting more. Talking about the normalized strategic uncertainty, because there is a strategic uncertainty. America used to be the global dominant power and it was a creator for a certain global order. But when America is now retreating from its dominant position to ensuring and consolidating its home position, so in that case, it is important to understand that to some extent, America is now talking about the self-centric policies. Now, talking about that, what is the philosophical core of the national security strategy? So first thing it is highlighting is the economic nationalism as the national security. So you might have heard that the foreign policy of the country is a comprehensive document that talks about what are the country's priorities. But here in the national security strategy of 2025, it is appearing that entire foreign policy is mainly revolving now around the economic policies. That's why the economic nationalism has been emphasized. So as I was talking about the trade, technology, supply chains, industrial policy, all of these are becoming the front line. So with respect to the trade, just after assuming the office, there were trade barriers related issues, reciprocal trade related issues. Apart from that, there were a lot of issues that were being raised with respect to the migration, the selective migration, H-1B visa, and a lot of other things that were being highlighted. So all these things highlight regarding the trade. Then talking about the technology, there are engagements with different parts of the world vis-a-vis United States of America. And in that particular case, the technological collaboration is also one such thing. So this technological collaboration to some extent is now emphasizing upon those things are going to help America. Like reshoring means bringing the companies which are of United States established outside to take back those countries again in the United States of America. You have seen the examples of Apple and many other firms, right? Talking about the supply chain, one of the prominent thing, because US considers China as a competitor. So in this particular case, when we are considering China as the competitor, in that case, when China is creating its own set of supply chain, which is hindering the US presence. So now US is countering this particular situation and creating its own alternative supply chains. Talking about the industrial policy again, because majority of the industries shifted outside from the United States of America to those countries where the labor is comparatively cheap, and apart from that, there are certain other benefits that particular countries can provide. But other than that, the United States, which is having those companies, now asking those companies to come back here and establish your firm in the United States, give the employment to them. So it is mainly revolving around the economic nationalism. Talking about the core pillars, apart from economic nationalism, all the things that are being highlighted is regarding the self-centric aspects. So the concept of sovereignty, which was to some extent diluted because of the arrival of globalization, that sovereignty is again being re-emphasized. The sovereignty, that means the country should be at the center and the country's interest has to be there, and along with that it should be in order to ensure a comparatively better relation with the external world without getting undue influence from that particular countries or the set of countries. Means those should not be dictating you what you should be doing. Apart from that, the homeland defense, self-reliance, industrial technological supremacy, all these things at one point of time United States was enjoying, but to some extent because of certain partnership, US is thinking that has shifted away from the United States, and that's why now United States want those things again come back to the United States in order to benefit the people who are the locals. Talking about the narrowing of the core national interest and illusion of restraint. So the core national interest, what they are identifying as the core national interest, so they have thought that the previous policy makers have overexpanded the America's reach. in the different war theaters. Now America is a participant. Why? Because the leaders had taken America to there, whether it is Afghanistan, whether it is Iraq, whether it is any other part of the world. But America is not concerned about that, right? America is not getting any benefit. And you might have heard of the President Trump talking about that we have lost a lot of things over there, right? So in that particular case, now America is trying to ensure the strategic retreat from those particular places, and talking about core national interest means what is going to directly impact America, right? So the post-Cold War overextension of the American power, talking about the global domination was unsustainable and unpopular. Means they are now not aspiring for per se the global domination. But apart from that, whatever interest they are ensuring for them, that will make sure that the America will be at the topmost place across all the countries, right? Also do less globally to secure more domestically means we should not do more charity. We should be ensuring consolidation of our position. Talking about that, there is also the illusion of the restraint. That means we are not going to interfere, but we are able to see in the Caribbean, you see regarding the drug related issues, they have done the attacks. In the Iran also, when the Israel and Iran were fighting, there were the attacks on the 3 nuclear sites of Iran. That was also being done or carried out by the United States. That means it's not like that they are doing complete retreat, but to some extent they are giving the signal to the world that we are not going to actively interfere in those regions, right? So this is one such change or the philosophical core of the national security strategy. Now, what are the major shifts? How you are able to see that previously the national security strategies were talking about to some extent different aspects, and now it is talking about a complete shift. So first is regarding from the alliances to transactions. So what US was thinking that with the alliances we have lost more rather than gained more. Previously it was thought that the alliance is basically a type of force multiplier, means NATO. Means there are different other type of organizations with which United States was cooperating. United States was major funder. United States was major provider of the bureaucracy, military, right? But in that particular case, what is now the change? They are thinking that this is a cost center. Whenever we are deploying our forces, whenever we are giving more money, it is going to cost us more as compared to whatever we are gaining from that. And it is the other countries. You might have heard of those statements from the President Trump, jahan par he was talking about that in the case of NATO, it is for the European countries to step up, to give more to the NATO funding. It is not the responsibility of the United States to fund everything for NATO. So these are the statements. Now you can connect this with the national security strategy. So it is talking about like as a cost center. That means now US is going to retreat from the alliances. Burden sharing arrangement. That means we are not taking responsibility of any one theater by our own. If suppose we are talking about the Indo-Pacific, it is for the Indo-Pacific countries, the major countries like India, Australia, that have to step up and share the cost and share the burden. It's not like that it is the completely United States responsibility in order to ensure that. Talking about the instrument to advance the American interest first. That means all these things are being done in order to propagate the American interest, not about the interest of the other part of the world. Talking about the end of the rule-based international order. So you have seen that after the World War II, there was the liberal international economic order, liberal international political order, establishment of the organizations, for example, the Bretton Woods institutions. Then there are other institutions, for example, for the financing related regional institutions are there. Then apart from that, the United Nations as a major organization. And these are organizations which were being supported and backed by the United States of America. That point of time, US was gaining actively from these organizations. Other countries were comparatively lesser developed as compared to the United States. Now, fast forward to the 21st century, there are a lot of competitors that have emerged as a competition to the United States of America. And in that particular sense, now what US wants the self-centric policies. They are saying that we do not want the liberal international economic order. We do not want that we are actively going to interfere in any other country in order to establish the democracy, like the democracy at the gunpoint. We do not want that this particular regime should be toppled. These are the things that they are trying to say over here in this particular policy. But what they are saying, we are going to focus upon that how US interest can be propagated. So they are saying that the focus on the balance of power. Like if in any specific theater, one country is gaining prominence, then we are going to counter its power by creating certain other alternative powers. And that will be from that theater only. So for example, the cooperation with India with respect to the Latin America for the critical mineral supply chain. So this is to counter the Chinese presence in that particular region of Latin America and the Caribbean islands. Apart from that, with respect to Africa, again the Chinese presence in Africa, which pokes and which says that the United States now have to cooperate with India in order to cooperate better in that particular region or gain the benefit of that. So everything going on with respect to United States is right now focusing upon the transaction, talking about the monetary aspects, right? So the balance of power, maintaining the sphere of influence, its dominance in that particular region, all these are very, very important. Talking about the civilizational pluralism, so it is saying that we do not want to interfere in the country. If there is any regime, let's say democratic or non-democratic, we are not that much concerned about that, and we do not care that much, right? Basically, our interest has to be fulfilled. If that regime is fulfilling our interest, we do not have any type of hesitation in order to deal with that. So it is more like from the philosophical aspect now to the practical realities they are shifting. Talking about the change of stand on the Russia and the China. So previously in the last national security strategy, they have mentioned the Russia as the revisionist power. That means there is a rise of Russia. Russia can pose the threat to the core aspects of the United States. Simultaneously, China was also a major threat. Now, in this particular security strategy, they have mentioned that Russia is no longer a threat. That means in future, there is a high chances that the Russia and United States may engage in the detente, right? That was observed after the World War II and specifically in the second phase of the Cold War, jahan par tension between these two regions reduced and there was a sense of cooperation between these two regions, and that's what is being sensed by the Russia's change of stand, matlab United States change of stand on Russia and the cooperation that might be followed with this in the relation between the US and Russia that may change the stand. Apart from that, with respect to China, it is mentioned that yes, China is a competitor, but competitor in the economic terms. They are not saying that it is an existential threat like previously mentioned by different regimes. It is mentioned that it is primarily an economic competitor. It's not like a major competitor in every domain. It is about mainly the economic competitor. And that's why the supply chain challenger, and that has to be maintained with the alternative power. Now, talking about the regional shift, when we are talking about the regional shift, now previous regimes it was the Indo-Pacific which was focused a lot upon. And why? Because of the emergence of China. Now again, the China centrism is to some extent there, but the region is shifted. So the the first important priority as far as the United States regime is concerned, that particular priority is the Americas or the Western Hemisphere. Now see, try to recall the policy of Monroe Doctrine of 1823, jahan par he has clearly mentioned and warned the European countries not to interfere in the sphere of influence of the United States of America. And what was that sphere of influence or the area where the United States was having comparatively more influence or more power? It was about the Americas, including the North America, South America and the Caribbean region. Now, what this particular NSS of 2025 is talking about, it is talking about Monroe Doctrine 2.0 with the changes as per the Trump's corollary. What is this? It is basically talking about that there has to be focus on the terrorism, there has to be focus on the drug control, there has to be focus upon the espionage, human trafficking. These are the thought process that have to be ensured, and for that obviously which are the countries which are more responsible in order to propagating the instability nearby US? As per US, it is China. So countering China becomes an aspect with respect to the Western Hemisphere, because in the Latin America and Caribbean region, the Chinese presence is one such threat for the United States of America. And that's why now US wants to ensure the sphere of influence again in the Western Hemisphere, specifically in the entire region of the Americas, North America, South America and the Caribbean islands. So basically, it is talking about the Western Hemisphere as the priority number one. So that time it was Europe. Now it is threat to China. So a threat of China poses the national security strategy stand change towards shifting from the Pacific to the Western Hemisphere. Now talking about the immigration control, we have talked about this. Further, the countering China's economic footprint in the Western Hemisphere, has become very, very important. Now the China is collaborating with the different countries. There are free trade agreements. There are already a lot of dependency of those countries on China, whether it is the supply chains, whether it is critical minerals, whether it is the economic support. So basically all these things now United States wants to play a better and a greater role in that particular region. And for that, obviously they will need the support. So they would want India's support in that particular region. So infrastructural competition they want to put for China, the critical mineral partnership where they have clearly stated about the role of India in order to ensure the alternative to the Chinese policies. Talking about this, the trade partnership, again another thing where they will need the support from the countries like India, because the collaboration is needed in order to counter the security threat. But yes, the collaboration is not a guarantee for the future. It is again the transactional one. It's not providing any such guarantee to any of the country. That's why the regional shift is talking towards the Western Hemisphere now. Talking about the other regions, so Indo-Pacific again important, but not the first priority. It comes at the second place as far as the United States national security strategy is concerned. Now it is talking about, yes, there is importance of the freedom of navigation over there, because the Chinese policies, specifically in the South China Sea through the 9-dash line and the other type of control, is preventing and hindering the free navigation, open, free, and other aspects of the Indo-Pacific. So that's why the free navigation is being ensured. The Taiwan status quo, because what US wants to ensure that the China should also be curtailed, but for that they do not want that the other theater should be compromised, which is their foreign policy priority, right? The Western Hemisphere. That's why they says ki bhai, there are certain regional organizations, for example Quad, which is the quadrilateral dialogue. So they ask the countries of the Quad to step up in this particular region and share more burden. It's not like that it is only the responsibility of the United States. In order to do all these things, it is also has to be shared by the other countries like the India, Australia, right? So it is talking about the status quo on Taiwan, specifically talking about that any of the unilateral alteration of the status quo has to be prevented, and that's why unofficial support to Taiwan, along with that the defense related support, all these things United States is continuing. That means here there is no such change of stand. Talking about the deterrence against the large scale conflict. So they are saying that we are retreating. We are not actively engaging in any specific region. But if there is any large scale conflict, that yes, we are going to step in and we are going to ensure the global order, right? Talking about focus of more on the countering unfair Chinese trade practices. So again, this is going to help them in the Indo-Pacific as well as in the Western Hemisphere. Talking about the supply chain security, again in the Indo-Pacific and the Western Hemisphere. Talking about the burden sharing by the regional partner. So here they are talking about the Quad and specifically this particular group to pitch up more for the better security architecture in this particular region. Now, talking about, and which is very, very important aspect, that where does India stand as far as the national security strategy is concerned? Because it is the United States doctrine and it is going to impact a lot of countries. So obviously the impact is also going to be there on the countries like India, which is basically maneuvering in this particular strategic space. So whether it is going to curtail the India's movement or whether it is going to facilitate India's movement, that is one such thing which is to some extent highlighted in this particular doctrine. So when we talk about the India's aspect with respect to the national security strategy, first it is improving the commercial and the strategic relations and to strengthen the Quad. So Quad 2.0, which is being promised by the United States, but at the same time it is talking about sharing the burden. That means we are going to support you, but this particular support is not unconditional. Here you have to also step in, you have to also take the responsibility, and there is no such guarantee that we are going to provide. So that means they are emphasizing upon the increased role for India, increased role for certain other major countries, but at the same time without any guarantees. That is the first prominent thing. Second, partnering with India for the Western Hemisphere influence critical mineral in Africa. So as I have talked about, whether you talk about the Latin America and Caribbean region, in order to counter Chinese policies, they are asking India to support with respect to the trade related partnership, with respect to the supply chain related partnership, specifically for the critical minerals, right? So in that particular case, like lithium and many other critical minerals which are available in South America and specifically in the South America and the the Latin Caribbean island countries, right? So those particular aspects are being emphasized. Apart from that, a critical mineral in the Africa. So the Africa, there are many such regions. For example, DRC is there. There are other countries of the Central America which are hosting the large amount of the critical mineral. So those are also being emphasized. And since India is having the regional influence, they are asking India to support the United States policy. Talking about the cooperation to keep the sea lanes open in the South China Sea. So here also, since it is in the India's near proximity, and India is having comparatively better terms with the countries of the South China Sea. So in that particular case, the India's role specifically as a member of Quad and a member of the Indo-Pacific, it is going to be very, very important and crucial. And this is also being recognized by the United States of America. So basically what US wants for India is a functional partner and not the strategic anchor. What is the difference between two? The functional partner and not the strategic anchor. So in the context of functional partner means for different function, for the trade function, for the strategic influence, for the defense cooperation, for tech cooperation, they want the support. But at the same time, when it comes to whether the America's policy has to be performed at the first space or other countries, it is the America first. So it is talking about the America first and rest of the world second. So like this is the policy, and this is the reality of the global order right now, and this has to be dealt in that manner only, along with the strategically maneuvering this complex space. Right now, talking about this particular thing, now what are the implications of this national security strategy for the countries like India? Now, in this particular case, the strategic autonomy of India is going to expand, because see, when US is retreating, a lot of global spaces that are being left. For example, Indo-Pacific, that is not the first priority. That means India can step in, India can collaborate with different countries. For example, Pacific Island countries, for example, countries like Australia and Japan, like the triangular dialogues can be there. So in order to contain China, or in order to ensure that China should not overstep in this particular region, there can be further collaboration. Along with that, there are countries like Russia. So previously, a few months back, United States was saying that India should not purchase the oil from Russia because it is funding the terrorism, right? But at the same time, what now US is doing? US is retreating. That means it is giving more strategic maneuver for India to collaborate with Russia. And tomorrow, suppose karo, if there is any detent that will be there between US and Russia, that is going to help India. That is going to help India in order to have further better relation with both the blocks. And that's what is very, very important. Similarly, Middle East, when United States is not considering that the Middle East at the center of their foreign policy, that means whether India is collaborating with GCC countries, whether India is collaborating with the North African countries or the countries like Israel, that will be not challenged by the United States of America, and that is going to be also one such prominent thing. And further, the Global South leadership, which India is holding right now, and basically the voice of Global South Summit, the technological transfer, even during the time period of COVID, the initiatives like the vaccine Maitri. So in all these cases, India have shown to the world that it can lead the world in certain manner. Further, talking about the strategic uncertainty, because this particular policy talks about certain things, for example, the self-reliance, for example, America first, for example, make America great again, but at the same time, it is talking about the self-restraint, means we are not going to actively engage in the different region. But at the same time, they are doing this in the Caribbean island countries, they are doing this at the different other places of the world, including the Middle East, as and when the situation arises. So that means kahin na kahin abhi bhi strategic uncertainty hai. And when US is going to retreat, there may be rise of the other countries. For example, China is eyeing on the place that has been left by the United States. So the China-Pakistan axis is also one such prominent thing, which is going to rise if the retreat of United States will be there. Along with that, the Quad-related ambiguity. Now, previously, the United States was at the forefront of supporting Quad. They were saying that, yes, we want to make the Quad a better place, right? We are going to collaborate better. We are going to ensure that it is going to ensure the free, open Indo-Pacific region. But now they are saying ki nahi, it is not only our responsibility, it is the responsibility of other countries also. So that means other countries should also step in. So these are the things that they are talking about, which is to some extent confusing the world, that what exactly is the thought process that they are imparting. Talking about the from strategic partnership to the strategic transaction, this is the key theme, I would say, because Previously, it used to be strategic partnership, jahan par the other countries are also used to take comparatively equal amount of benefit. But whatever right now is being done is through the transaction perspective, that how US is going to get, what benefit US is going to get. In all these cases, it is going to be ensuring the strategic transaction for the United States of America rather than the benefit to the other countries or the collaboration in the strategic domain. Now, in these cases, when the world view is shifting for the United States of America, what will be the roles and responsibility at the India's end? So first thing is regarding the multi-alignment. So basically, see, US is also not saying that we are in creating a block. ऐसा नहीं है कि they are saying that we are going to collaborate only with the European world. They are saying कि जैसा जैसा need होगा, जहां जहां पे transactional benefit होगा, we are going to collaborate with those. So in that case, India also focus upon the multi-alignment rather than just the either non-alignment or ensuring the collaboration with only one set of countries. So it has to diversify its partnership. It has to collaborate with Russia. It can to some extent collaborate with China also if the need arises. It also can ensure the collaboration in the Western countries. It can ensure the collaboration with the European Union. There are economic aspects that has to be promoted, right? So all these things has to be done by India and not the block politics. ऐसा नहीं है कि सिर्फ एक block पे reliant रह सकते हैं. Talking about the regional leadership now, when the US is retreating, India is having the credentials available. India is focusing upon the defense indigenization. India is a rising economy of the world. India is having the population. So India can provide the alternative worldview. Historically, we have provided, now we are having the capacity in order to dictate certain things at least, and in that particular case, the regional leadership at least we can take, and specifically the strategic space that was being left by the United States, which is the South Asia and the Southeast Asia, and specifically the Indo-Pacific region, where the India can ensure its dominance, or to some extent, India can ensure its order in this particular region. Talking about the economic and the strategic resilience, so see, it is well known that what US is doing is for their benefit. So obviously when we are doing something, it is for our benefit that we have to focus upon. So the strategic resilience, the economic resilience, doing the partnership with different countries, signing the FTAs, for example, UK was there, then the EFTA country was there. We are in the discussion and the negotiation with the Eurasian Economic Union, later on with the European Union also. We are also in the trade deal with the United States. So we are also diversifying a lot of things, and that has to be the key pointer of this. Talking about the India's security will depend upon the capacity than comfort. Jitna zyada India can work upon its capacity building and not relying only on comfort, that yes, we are having a strategic cushion in the form of US or Russia, that will be helping us in order to strategically maneuver in this particular complex places. And that's what is the need of the time. So finally, talking about the way forward, that what is going to be the way for India. So as it is being aptly highlighted, that for India, the message is very, very clear. It has to be the world's leading power will not manage uncertainty for you, and you will be responsible for whatever things are being created at the world. So you must learn to manage it with yourself. There is no other power is going to come to support you. So that means you have to be self-reliant. So Atmanirbharta or Atmanirbhar Bharat, it is going to be the key theme of the future. And that's what India also has to focus upon. So as the Trump is highlighting regarding the Make America Great Again, we also have to strategically think about that what all things are going to help India in order to ensure its place better at the global level, along with that emphasizing upon the India-specific policies, right? So these all are the things and the strategic analysis of the United States national security strategy, its implication on India, its implication on the India vis-a-vis United States, kya relation change hoga, all these things we have tried to ensure. So I have given you certain sets of opinion. Now you can build your set of opinion upon this, and then you will be having a conclusive aspects and a more detailed approach with respect to this topic. So whatever we have discussed, I think I might have made myself clear to you, and you might have understood this particular topic. So for further discussions for different other topics, we are going to meet again in the next week. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.